Here are the lenses laid out, and that's quite a busy slide, so I'm going to take you through them one by one. First up, we've got our red lens. Now, this red lens looks at the emotions and the energy of the individual. We know for those who are neurodivergent, we can have greater degrees of variation in both our emotions, so how intensely we feel them, the kinds of things that create an emotional response for us, but also our energy, the kinds of things that has an impact on our energy and the kind of things that give us more energy. So when we're designing our training or our spaces for people to be in, think about emotional response. What is the emotional response that might come up? If we're putting somebody on the spot, if we're asking them a direct question immediately, what's going to happen there for individuals? Is that going to be easy for them, or actually could we create a more intense emotional response for them? Next up, energy drains. What are the things that might have a really significant impact? And what we're thinking here is more of that social energy rather than the physical energy, although that comes in as well. So if we have an opener, an icebreaker, an energizer, where somebody has to go and speak to all of the different people in the room, actually for some of us, that might have a really big energy drain. If we have to do intense, quiet work, that could have a big energy drain. It's not going to be the same things that drain energy. So what we want to do is check all of our activities. Could this have a big drain on energy? And how can we offer space and reassurance? What are the things that we can do there where people have a bit of rest time built in if they need it, a bit of reflection time, and that bit of encouragement to show that they're getting it, they're doing well? There's our red lens. Next up, we have an orange lens. Now, this lens is looking at execution and focus. We know that this can be harder for those who are neurodivergent. There's something called executive function, and this happens in the front of our brain, and it's where we do our things like planning, prioritizing, concentrating, focus, organizing, task initiation, just getting going with things. So again, when we're looking at creating our spaces or our environments, what are the planning requirements we're giving people? Are we making it really easy for them to turn up and know where they're going? When we're giving people exercises or activities to go away and do, are we making that clear? Are we showing which order things should be done in? Are we supporting organisation? Are we giving a really nice, clear list that says this is what you need to bring with you? Or are we expecting people to rely on trying to figure it out through 15 different emails? Are we thinking about concentration dips? Are we allowing for that? Are we creating hooks that just bring people back in for engagement? So this orange lens is looking all around. How do people use their executive function? How do they execute the task at hand? And how do they focus? And how do we create a space that makes it easier for those things to happen? Next up, we have our yellow lens. The yellow lens is looking at the sensory experience. Again, we know that this can feel significantly more or less intense for neurodivergent people. Now, I've asked you to consider your 5 senses. I'd love it if you can put into the chat for me, what are your 5 senses? See how many we can get to. What are your 5 senses? Some of the other things that we can do, just while I'm waiting for some answers on that. We can give people things to fidget with, something to fiddle with. Now, often it's not just about the item that we provide, but the signal we give by giving somebody something small, something like this little fidget here, just shows people that actually they're welcome to fidget. They don't have to sit perfectly still. We can create quiet zones. in our training, in our spaces for people, where if it is a bit overwhelming, if it is very noisy, if it is very intense, they can take a bit of a break there. And that links us into that sensory break. If we're creating something that is intense in terms of our senses, how do we bring that in? Mansi, thank you so much. Mansi's provided us with our 5 senses into the chat there. Seeing or sight, touch or texture, smells, tastes, and our hearing. So when we're thinking about what we're designing, what are we anticipating people are going to see? What are the textures that we're creating? Are we asking people to touch each other? Are we asking people to touch different textures, different chairs, different tables? How will that be for people? Are there any smells going on? Is there any particular tastes? Are we thinking about the food that we're providing, the drinks that we're providing? Is it loud? Can we manage that? Or are you getting very excited in activities and it's getting much louder? And what can we do to just make that more manageable? We can also think about this when we're working online as well. We can think about the visual clutter that we could have around us that could have an impact for that individual. We could think about how we position our slides and our materials to make it easy for somebody to absorb. We could think about offering that it's okay for people to turn their camera off and have a stretch and a fidget and a fiddle. We can think about the sound quality that we're providing. Do we have clear sound? Do we have a good microphone? Are we free from distractions in the background? Have we set up our Zoom settings or our Teams settings to isolate our voice to make it easier for somebody to hear us? All of these things are really significant in terms of this yellow lens and that sensory experience in the spaces we create. So let's move on now. We're going to move to our green lens. And this is all about processing and memory. Now, processing, just like with a computer, is how our brain takes information and does something with it. When we're reading, we're processing. When we're listening, we're processing. When we're thinking about a word to use to respond, we're processing. When we're looking at a maze and we're working out how to get out of the maze, we're processing. All of that is our brain processing. Our memory. Now, if I sent you off to do an activity, say, for example, each of these 7 lenses, and gave you no notes, no guide, perhaps I put you straight into breakout rooms with no slides in the breakout room and just expected you to remember each of those 7 lenses. Some of us might be able to do it, but for some of us, that's going to be much harder. So think about, how do we break this down? Things like the decisions that need to be made. How do we break that down for people so they can see the order? How are we giving people visual and written prompts so that they can follow what they need to do? And what bias, coming back to that neuronormative bias, what bias do we have around memory? Do we assume people are going to be able to remember things? Or do we make sure that we create opportunities where people don't have to remember things, where we give them reminders? So we're about halfway through our lenses now. And for those that may have noticed, they are in rainbow order, which means the next of our lenses is going to be the blue lens. Now, this blue lens looks at social connection. Social connection is around how we connect with each other, how we interact, and how we just be in a space together. This can vary in both ease and format significantly for those who are neurodivergent. This is things like walking into a room and asking to be give something interesting about yourself. For many that are neurodivergent, that can be really, really tricky to work out what is interesting in this context. It may be that we're expected to go and play bingo. Some of you may have done this before, where you have to go around and speak to somebody of every single element on a bingo card. And actually, that can be really tricky for some people. So think about, what are the normative expectations we have? Now, normative, going back to that neuronormative bias, a normative expectation is one where we just imagine that this would be normal. And for us to work this out, we might have to have conversations. We might have to do more research and really delve into, what are the things I just expect? I just expect people to be able to, come in and make small talk. I just expect people to be really comfortable being put on the spot and answer questions. I just expect people to be really happy to go into a large group and have conversations in that group. So check in with your expectations and how they might land. Give in the space to people to have one-to-one time or alone time. So often we'll present people with some information and then we'll say, right, I'm going to put you into groups and I want you to talk with your group. Some of us might process that information that's been given far better individually or on a one-on-one. So offer that. Don't be too prescriptive. If you're online, it can be harder. If you're using Zoom, you can set your breakout rooms so that you can let people choose which room they want to go in. Reduce the forced socializing. Not all of us enjoy small talk. Not all of us are good at small talk. And for many of us, actually, that can have a really significant drain on our energy, on our attention span, on the amount of brain power we've got left for the training that we need to do, for the learning that we need to do, and for the interacting that we need to do, if we used it all up doing that kind of pleasantries at the beginning. So we've got just a couple more. Our indigo lens, communication and language. Again, we know that our communication, our language can be expressed and processed differently for those who are neurodivergent. What we mean by this is, we may find that somebody understands the spoken word more slowly and needs more time. We may find that somebody communicates in a much more monotone tone of voice, even when they're really excited or enthusiastic about something. We may well find that somebody finds reading to be excruciatingly difficult. And if we make the assumption that if I put some instructions up here in writing, everybody will be able to do it, then we could well be doing that person a massive disservice. So, what's the tone of how we're speaking? What's the method in which we're communicating? Are we relying really heavily on one method, or are we giving people more than one? And what's the speed in which we're communicating? Often, if we're excited about something, or if we know we've got a lot to fit in, then we can find ourselves getting quite quick, quite animated. And actually, that can really hold us back. So what we want to do is consider how clear we are and how slow we are. We want to think about the reading and writing ability. Now, this could be anything from reading the slides, but also thinking about when we ask people to just write that down on a piece of paper and then show it to everybody. We're making that assumption that everybody can write. And then think about the clarity we're giving. Is it absolutely obvious what it is that's being asked for? Are we giving the opportunity for somebody to ask us questions in case it wasn't clear? That's what we want to do to really set up through that indigo lens. The final lens that we're going to put on today is the violet lens. And this lens looks at our body and our movement. Now, often this is the one that's most forgotten when we think about neurodivergence. We might think about it in terms of physical disability. But for neurodivergent folk, some need to be able to move. That's really, really important. To be able to fidget, to be able to just stretch their body allows them to be grounded enough to take on new information. So often, again, we have that normative bias that helps us assume ability. We assume, for example, that everybody will be able to throw and catch a ball. For some who are neurodivergent, things like dyspraxia, which affects our motor skills, being autistic also can affect our motor skills, and being dysgraphic affects our fine motor skills. Throwing and catching a ball might be really tricky. Also, dexterity. Are we giving people enough space if we're physically together in order to be able to navigate around chairs and tables and in and out of rooms? Are we making it clear to access the resources that we've got available? Now, by looking through these 7 lenses, we can sense check whether we're designing a workspace, whether we're designing a training space, whether we're just bringing a group of people together for a meeting. It gives us the opportunity to just make sure that we're giving the best possible chance to those people that are coming in. It's not going to cover everything, and that means we still need to ask the question, is there anything I can do to better help you today? But it sets us a really good starting point. So here's the lenses all together. Give you a moment just to absorb, to take them in, to think about them. Now, when we think about this through a systems level approach, we go from saying neurodivergent people need adjustments to actually saying our design needs adjusting so more people can thrive. Right at the beginning, when I said about relying on disclosure, that means that we're on a people level approach. We're thinking about things one by one. And actually, that's probably not going to set us up for success in the best possible way. So I want you to have a think now and consider a training or facilitation scenario. I want you to think about one or more of those lenses and how that would come into that session. So that's our fit. How might one or more of those lenses fit into that session? We then have one low effort change we could make. That's our adaptation. We have the constraint. What would make that change hard? And then how would we do the best that we can given that constraint? And that's our workaround. So this, I would like you to join in, to tell me, and I'm going to go back and just put the 7 lenses back up for you so that you can see, and add into the chat that prompt that I gave you. So the fit of one of the lenses in your facilitation space, an adaptation you could make, a constraint you might face, or a workaround. So let's start off with the first one. Thinking about the spaces you create, what's the first lens you think, and there's no right or wrong order on this, it's individual, but what's the first lens you think would be good for you to consider around one of your facilitation or training or workplace spaces? Please feel free to come back to me to add into the chat. Thanks so much. So we've got communication and language here. We've got the green lens. Fabulous. Processing and memory. The violet lens, body and movement. Give us a moment, see if we have any more. Thinking about the lens that you would start off with, that you would go to think about the spaces that you're currently creating, the workshops, the programs that you're designing. The blue lens, our social connection. So what's really interesting here is that we've got green, blue, indigo, and violet. 4 answers and 4 totally different ones. And this perfectly illustrates that there is not a right or wrong way of starting. Actually, this is about that iteration, iterative process, putting a lens on, having a look, putting another lens on, having a look, and working through. So next up in our process is adaptation. So if you take the lens that you'd considered, what's one thing that you could adapt in what you do currently in line with that lens? Give you a moment to think about it, to consider it. See if we get any answers into the chat. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for asking me to repeat. So now we're on to adaptation. So thinking about the lens that you were going to look through, what's one adaptation you can make to the programs or training or spaces that you create? We've got an answer here, making sure your texts are legible and not cluttered. Absolutely. Really, really good one. Fabulous. Interestingly, that one can come under 2 different areas. Thinking about our text being legible and not cluttered, we could think about it from a communication perspective. We can also think about it from that sensory perspective. So thinking about the clutter and the impact on our sight as a sense. We've got an amazing answer here, the green lens. I'd include methodologies to beat the forgetting curve. Our brain can only remember a certain percent of information. Example, introducing spaced learning and assessments. Yeah, definitely. And the thing with this is, you're absolutely right. Our brain can only remember a certain percentage, but that's going to be different for every learner that you have or every participant you have. There's not a one size percentage of how much we can remember. So definitely include those methodologies. Think about what are the ways we can reinforce and that we can break down what it is we're asking people to remember. Brilliant. Got some other lenses coming in here. So again, thinking about the yellow lens, what are the things that you might adapt in your practice, in your training, to support that yellow lens there? Next up, and this one's one that's a bit more detailed for you to go away and have a think about, but what are the constraints that you face? Now, it might be that in the answer that we had here of making your text legible and not cluttered, maybe you're thinking, one of the constraints I've got is that there is so much information that I want to give, and it's about how I give that all in one go. So if that's the constraint, we're then thinking about what's the workaround then. We're really conscious of the impact this can have for people. How do we do a workaround? So one of the things that I do sometimes is I have a slide that's nice and clear. It's free of clutter. But then separately, I have a worksheet, and that's got a lot of text in it. That's the thing where you would go back to and read through it. And I'll give people a link so that they can click onto that. If you use Microsoft, you can use OneDrive to share a document in real time. If you use Canva, again, you can create a Canva Live document. There's all sorts of different ways of doing it. But what we can do by doing that is make sure that we're giving people that choice of what's good for you to consume and when. Next up, thinking about the forgetting curve, the constraints might be a time constraint. So Can we give resources that somebody can use outside of our learning environment to revisit? Can we give people really nice, crisp pages of handouts rather than slides where we're giving them 20 slides and they'd have to skip back through? Just that one page that helps them to break down. Brilliant constraint there. Whatever we may choose, it won't be possible to suit the needs 100% as the audience may vary. And that's an absolute perfect constraint. Our workaround on here, be really curious what your thoughts are on the workaround to that. Let me know. Give you a moment to type. Some of the thoughts I have around workarounds. Here we go. To combine a blended approach like pre-work notes, during program media and post-work. Yes, absolutely. So one of the biggest workarounds that we have in the context of our audience is going to vary. And it will, it's absolutely going to vary. And even if we have the same group, we may have somebody who didn't sleep the night before on one session that we have with them. And that has an impact. We may have somebody who is really stressed and that has an impact. So definitely the workarounds are offering choice, offering variety, offering different ways of interacting, of consuming the information, and also offering that psychological safety to say, it's okay for you to tell me what you need. Our role as a facilitator is to provide that opportunity for somebody to take some understanding, to take some learning. And it's okay for them to tell us what they need in order to do so. So let me just skip back forwards. This is the 7 lenses. And for those working in that leadership space, I wanted to give you just a little build here. Thinking about neuroinclusion as a leadership and infrastructure priority. When we think about who designs the physical and digital environments that we work in, who owns the meetings that we attend, who communicates the norms of a workplace, who owns that workload design, and who sets pace, priorities, and deadlines. Well, actually, when we look at all of these, it shows us leadership has a huge responsibility for neuroinclusion. And neuroinclusion should be sitting as an infrastructure priority. We cannot create the best workplaces if we're not getting the best out of every individual within it. So my final point today before I open up for your questions is, what can you do? Again, it's an opportunity for you to take that moment to really think, what is it that I can do, having been here today, to level up my practice as a trainer, a facilitator, a manager, a colleague? How can I go forwards and really be more mindful to create a more inclusive environment for those around me? Give you a moment, and of course, I would love to welcome your questions, any thoughts that you have. Really, really good answer here. Thank you so much, Mansi. Know your audience better. As a learning professionals, we spend a lot of time on content design. Knowing audience mix is equally crucial. The more, the better. Definitely. And of course, we're not always going to know our audience. And if we don't know our audience, if we don't have that opportunity, what could we do to facilitate still giving them the best? Thank you so much. Any other thoughts or questions?
Yeah, even the question platform is officially open now for the question and answers. So yeah, side by side, what can you do? You can also ask, any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Some live polling can help. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And live polling gives people just that opportunity to interact um, in a quick way, if we're working online. Um, and it does, we can ask people anonymously, would you prefer to do it like this or like this? Really good answer. Thank you. I can't see any other questions coming in, so I think maybe we're all good for questions. For me, I just want to say a huge thank you to you all for taking the time out of your day for interacting and joining in with this session and for welcoming me here today.
It was absolutely pleasure having you here. And yes, if we have any questions, then you can drop them in the chat box. Also, I have shared Haley's LinkedIn or the chat box. So if you would like to connect with her in future, please feel free to do that. And she would be happy to give you further guidance itself. And yes, like I can check across one's live stream if we have any questions, and otherwise we can wrap up. Oh yes, here we have one question. How do you convince leadership into adopting neurodivergence as a differentiator?
What an amazing question. So in the UK, we have an analogy called the carrot and the stick. Some of you may have heard of it, but if you haven't, I'm going to explain it. I think it goes back to donkeys. Basically, we have some donkeys that are motivated by following a carrot. So you would hold the carrot in front of them. Some donkeys are motivated by a stick behind them. When we think about the carrot and the stick in terms of this, because ultimately what we're looking for is how do we motivate leadership into this? We want to look at both approaches. Our carrot approach is to think about things like increased productivity. So there's many studies, Harvard Business Review's got some case studies on it, looking at increased productivity when we have neuro inclusion built into our businesses. Increased well-being. And interestingly, studies are showing us that it's increased well-being for all, not just the neurodivergent folk, again, when we build in neuro inclusion. Increased profitability, again, that's come through as well. So that's that side of it. The other side of it is to think about, and this is going to vary in different parts of the world, but the moral and legal implications of not doing so. Again, like I say, it's going to depend on where in the world you are on what that looks like. And so I'm going to leave that open. One of the big things that really helps this shift is to consider what the fears could be and what the reluctance could be. Sometimes the fears are that it's going to be really complicated, that it's going to be something that means that we have to totally overshadow what we're doing. Now, exactly as I've just taken you through today, it's not complicated. It does need a bit more consideration, but actually, very often that consideration benefits the majority. So those would be my things. Consider what it is that's going to provide the motivation, provide the evidence that goes alongside it, and then remove the obstacles, which are generally fear or a lack of knowledge. See, we've got another question here. I wanted to find out if there is a way to accommodate all neurodivergent learners in our designs. This question is really what the seven lenses is about. There isn't a one perfect way. There was for a little while a notion that for dyslexic learners, we would print everything on green paper for them. The thing is that helps some dyslexics, but not all of them. there's a notion that those with ADHD need things in a very specific way. And again, it's not quite right. Things are going to be different so I have ADHD. My ADHD is going to mean that I want something different out of your learning session to somebody else. And what that means is that there isn't a perfect way to execute this. So by going through those 7 lenses, by considering the different ways in which we design, thinking about the reliance we have on memory, the reliance we have on social communication, thinking about the opportunities we give for movement and the obligations that we place on movement, thinking about how somebody's energy might fluctuate, the emotional impact that this has for somebody, and working through them, that's going to put you in a really, really good place. The final thing to add is to ask individuals and ask them ahead of time and ask them again during. So if you have the opportunity to contact them prior to them attending your session, please let me know if there's anything I can do to help you learn at your best. And then again on the day.
Thank you so much, Helly, once again for being a part of today's session. We were absolutely delighted to have you. And before we call this session off, would you like to make any final statement or give any feedback to the audience?
Just a massive thank you to everybody. Thank you for joining in, for taking the time out of your day. Please do feel free to connect. And actually, if you're interested in this topic, later on this year, I'm publishing it as a full book. So you'll be able to get a copy of that.
Thank you so much. As I've told you that I've already shared Haley's LinkedIn over the chat box. So please feel free to connect with her, as I'm sure you can have really interesting conversations with her. Thank you so much once again, Haley. And allow me a minute as I share my screen because I have a few announcements to make. So if any one of you would like to opt for certificates for learning and development, you can use the promo code which is mentioned here, LND20, and all the participants are getting 20% discount on that. So make sure you're grabbing the opportunity. And the GSDC has also introduced utility tool that you all are getting for 100% offer. And all you have to do is use AUG 100. And yes, it will help you strengthen your professional presence, validate what you know, and open doors to the global opportunities. And we have another series of GEO happening this week, followed with the learning and development and AI and also ISO. So make sure if any of these topics inspires you or interest you, you're free to join these side-going sessions as well. And now it's time to celebrate our reference champions, Bhanu Durgesh, Avinash, and B. Venkatesh. Thank you so much for spreading awareness of this session. If you would like to be a part of this championship, where you can earn vouchers for $400, all you have to do is climb up the leaderboard by inviting your communities and your colleagues to one of these sessions. And as you start to climb up the leaderboard, you get the vouchers for $400 from GSDC. And if you would like to join in as a guest on Learning Capsule webinar or podcast, you can write to me on gauri@gsccouncil.org or pratibha@gsccouncil.org, and we would be more than happy to get you started from there. Lastly, we would love to connect with you. So follow us on LinkedIn, visit our website for more details, and you can also join the WhatsApp group. And if you could share your session takeaways on reviews.io, it will definitely be much. With this, we're coming to the end of today's session. I'm sharing more details about the utility tool and certifications in the bio. Thank you so much, everyone, once again. And Haley, have a good day ahead and good